Hey all, welcome back to Room 66. We appreciate all of our new subscribers who have decided to stay with us. It really helps us out and we appreciate each one of you. Tonight's stories are a compilation of true stalker stories sent in by our wonderful subscribers. So let's begin. This is a story that's hard to share, but it's also something that I desperately need to get off my chest. It's a story about learning the true meaning of being naive and deception. A story of destruction and of rebirth. I guess it all started about 3 or 4 years ago, when I had been working at my first job for about 2 years. That was the year that I would meet two men that changed my life forever. One for the better and one for the much worse. The restaurant that I worked at had been bought out by a big company, so there was a big overhaul in staff and everything else. A whole new set of managers and some new wait staff as well. One of these men would become my boyfriend 3 years later, and we're still very much in love now. The other, let's just call him Dan, because I can't even think of his name without getting upset. Dan started as a manager at the time. I never took much note of him. He was nice enough and seemed funny. I worked there for a while, getting closer as a friend to my current boyfriend. I then left that job for a good 6 months before returning to it. At this point, most of the staff had changed because of a high turnover. I only knew about 3 of the workers, one of which was Dan. Flash to about 1 year later, where him and I are okay friends, and I'm well into dating my boyfriend. He starts telling me compliments and love bombing me. He constantly found my weak spots and tried to make them better. He always tried to buy me things and get me to work more hours with him. I learned many things about him during this time, and I started to notice how very unstable he was. The dots started to connect, and I remembered how many fights he had gotten into, in his defense, or for the restaurant. I started thinking about his weapon collection, and how off his voice was when he said, "I had you picked out from the moment I met you." In my biggest moment of weakness, when I felt ugly and vulnerable, he made me feel pretty, and I made what I believe is the biggest mistake in my entire life. I listened to him. I sent him pictures that could destroy my relationship. I was naive in believing all the ways he related to me. He was just a great liar. He even joked to me about his masks and his 9 other personalities. I want to go back and slap myself for not putting it all together faster. The crazy look he got in his eyes sometimes. His breakdowns. So much of it were red flags that I didn't see. He knew how to manipulate me and the people around me. None of it even hit until about a week after I quit that place. Then one night, out of the blue, he started messaging me. Things started escalating because I had told him that there would never be anything between us the last time I had seen him. He starts ranting about justice and how he could see through me and my lies. He said that I needed to tell my boyfriend about us, or he would. I told him that there wasn't an us and that it wasn't any of his business. He kept insisting that he loved me and that we needed to be together. He couldn't take no for an answer, even though he kept asking and asking for me to tell him it was over. I told him, and he couldn't take it. He kept calling me a crazy bitch and trying to gaslight me. I'm thankful that I was strong enough not to believe him and to cut him completely off from my life. Then it got worse. He started talking in third person, calling himself Jack the Ripper, saying he was going to find me and find my boyfriend. I was panicking in my room, crying and throwing up, all while trying to deal with this. I asked him what he wanted, and all he said was you. I've never felt that kind of fear before. I started thinking about how much I love my boyfriend, my amazing, perfect boyfriend who's been with me through everything, and I calmed down. That's when I marched to my boyfriend's room, sit him down, and tell him everything. And we talked and he forgave me. And it hurt. I still haven't completely forgiven myself for hurting him, but I'm hoping one day I will. I messaged Dan and I told him I already told my boyfriend, and that he didn't have any more power over me. He then started grasping at straws, threatening my other job, where I work with children. even threatening my PlayStation account. He's a genius. He's insane. I called him by his name while he was talking in other personalities, and he told me to call him Jack or there would be consequences. I blocked him on everything. I deleted my Facebook. I disconnected myself from everyone who works there, and I spent the entire day speaking to police and the principal at my work. While talking to the police, they told me that soon he'll find someone new to target, so I could rest easy. But that didn't make me feel better. I still feel sick, because even if he's not fixated on me, that doesn't mean some other poor girl deserves him to do that to her. That experience with the police changed me. What do you do when someone says you have to be with them, or he'll kill you and the person you love? I didn't know, and I still don't. I still have nightmares. That Friday, while I was driving home from work, I got pulled over because an anonymous person called in describing my car and license plate, saying I was drunk and on drugs. Wonder who that could have been. I calmly explained to the officer that I was coming home from work and gave him my case number. I got about 8 calls a day from different random numbers for about 3 days after. Months later, after so much therapy and work, I see him twice. In one day. I know his car, so I pretty much get anxious whenever I see the color or make of that car anywhere. One day, my worst fear happened. I was just on my way to a doctor's appointment, and my turn was literally one light up. I pull up to a car that's way too familiar to me, and I notice that there's no way for me to escape. He knows my car. My windows aren't well tinted. I see the shadow of his hair move, and I know it's him, and my stomach rolls. I pull out my phone and I call my mom. Shaking so bad, I had to redial twice. I ended up making 5 different turns to get to the doctor instead of 1, and I parked very hidden. I was very proud of how calm I was when I walked in for my appointment. It was really hard. After my appointment, I met with my best friend and we go to walk her adorable dogs around her house. This guy knew where we were because my car was right there at my friend's house. And I see familiar movements from the corner of my eye. I seriously went cold. I see him walking and start to cross the street to the side where we were at. I didn't even say anything. I just dragged the dogs around the corner and kept turning and going until I felt safe. When I explained to my friend what happened, she helped me calm down, and honestly, I'm just very thankful she was there. I'm now writing this 7 months later. I'm still undergoing therapy from this, but I've started to do something very important. I've been reclaiming my space and my mind. I have slowly started to reach out to old co-workers from the restaurant, and I even went outside of the restaurant to say hi to the managers and servers I used to know. I found out the next day through my good friend that works there that he said he was very uncomfortable with me being there. I laughed. I genuinely laughed really hard. And then I went back for the next 3 days to pick up my friend, just to make a point. I haven't been strong enough to go inside yet, though. So many of my nightmares are placed there. I can smell it. I can hear the glass clicking, and it makes me shake. There's a certain shade of blue that he wears, and if I see it, it makes me shake. In every dream I have, that color is always lurking in the background. His presence is always felt. There's a big festival that includes that restaurant every year. It's so much fun, and it would be the first year that I could go in 4 years, because I always worked it. My friend invited me to go, and I was hesitant at first because I knew this is somewhere he would be. But I went, and sure enough, when we passed the restaurant, he was wearing the blue shirt. And instead of seeing him from the corner of my eye like I had on my dream, I looked him in the face. I got so angry, and I was just instantly pissed off, and honestly pretty anxious. I just kept walking and forced myself out of the funk. I haven't seen him since, but if I do, I'll update you guys. I was 16, going about life and trying to score well in tests to go to a college of my choice. He was in the class adjacent to mine. I've never spoken to him. I've only seen him around here and there. When school was about to end, he sent a slam book through a friend for me to write in. I found it very weird because we have had absolutely no contact, and I refused to write in it, and I told her that I didn't know him, so I wouldn't. On the last day of school, while I'm waiting in the parking lot, he and a friend come to stand in front of me and start saying things and making hand gestures. I don't say anything, so I just walk away as the car arrived. He then started calling up my aunt. I'd given everyone at school her number and talking to her. It never struck me as excessively odd because she never could remember his name, and she just told me that it was one of my classmates. He was trying to get into a similar college to mine, so they just talked about that. A year later, a friend calls me and tells me that he came to her house asking for information about me. He apparently told her that he liked her so much because she was my friend. Her dad was home when it happened, so he told her to inform me. She thought I knew about him, but I didn't. He was apparently going around my town looking for me and asking other people about me. She told me about how he followed me home and that she found this out from someone else, but I had no idea about that either. Then I remembered of all the times he and I were going in the same direction. His vehicle coming behind mine, but I brushed it off thinking that it was just because he lived nearby. However, I was very wrong. I was 18 and I was coming home for Christmas vacation, and I saw him on the way home. He was with a friend. They started following me. I had to get my passport renewed, so I needed to schedule an appointment. For that, I went to the office, and as I was telling them some personal info, he came in and started to make small talk with one of the men there. I got out after my work there was done. His friend and him were on the other side of the road to where my car was parked. I went home, but it didn't seem like they were following me then. But it doesn't really matter because they already knew where I lived. I checked my phone after I got home and I had a message from an unknown number around the time I was in the office. It was him. He introduced himself in it. I immediately blocked him and he messaged me from another number this time. The message said that his motive wasn't to mess with me and that he never talked to me in school or did anything else because of the same. He would delete my number, everything he had as a reminder of me that this would be his last message if I thought so. It ended with him saying that he just wanted me to know that he liked me. I blocked this number as well. I found it very creepy that he had to delete my number and everything he had as a reminder of me. Mostly because I don't know how he got my number, and we've never interacted for him to have things that reminded him of me. I thought I saw him just outside my backyard the next day, but I just rushed inside and locked the doors and didn't even dare to peek out the window. The next few days, I was looking out the window every now and then, making sure that there was no one there. I felt unsafe in my own home. I got back to college when I got a call from an unknown number. Because I'd given my number for official purposes, I don't always know exactly who's calling me, but I still picked up because it could have been important. It was his friend. He said I had no right to block him just like that, and that I did not know how to respect people. He said the Stalker changed after what I had done to him, and that I was ruining his life, and that the Stalker did not know that he had called me. He said that he didn't want me to be the reason for ruining someone's life, so he was telling me this. In order to undo the damages I had done, I needed to talk to the Stalker. He was very demanding and pushy. I said I refused. I genuinely felt afraid and traumatized by that phone call. So much that I ran to a friend's house in tears and told them about it. They told me if it were to happen again, I should just tell him off. For a while, whenever I got phone calls from an unknown number, my heart would start pounding and my hands would start shaking. I was afraid it would be them again. I was 19 when I got a message from an unknown number asking me how my exams were. I don't know how he knew I had exams then. Maybe he had friends spying on me. I blocked that number as well. I then proceeded to cut off all of my school friends because I didn't know who was giving him information about me. I was getting very paranoid, especially when I got a phone call from someone I knew back then. Of course I didn't pick it up. Then I got random messages from a few numbers that I again blocked. The reason I didn't change my number was because I had given it in a number of places for official purposes, and it would be a pain to change it from everywhere. I still don't know if he has people spying on me, and I don't know if he's gone for good, but I still feel unsafe and afraid sometimes. No one should have to go through things like this just because someone doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. Getting obsessed with someone to the point of threatening them with your life is downright horrifying. I was at the local grocery store I visit weekly to shop at for food. I normally spend $100 to $200 a week on food for myself and my family, so I always leave with the full cart. I'm standing at the checkout line minding my business when a tall man, I'd guess early 40s, approached me and complimented my hair. "Your hair is so gorgeous." Loud enough for everyone within a 20-foot radius to hear. Now, I appreciate a compliment as much as the next girl, but it was a little obnoxious to say the least. I thanked him politely and redirected my attention to my cart, where I awkwardly started organizing the items, in hopes that the 15 pairs of eyes that are now staring in my direction would look elsewhere. Unfortunately, Loudmouth didn't take the hint. He started asking rapid-fire questions, barely pausing for me to get a word in, before the next sentence would spill out of his mouth. This is when it gets really awkward. As if it wasn't weird enough, he asked if I want to go out with him sometime, maybe tonight after I put my groceries away. He could come to my house and help me put my groceries away, and then we could leave from there. I told him I didn't think my husband would appreciate that, and he got angry. I was freaked out at this point, and everyone was still staring. After I rejected his offer, his mood changed so fast, it was like a light switch got flipped and the compliments turned into nasty insults and curses. Mind you, this guy didn't have a cart or anything in his hand to buy. He was kind of standing off to the side, kind of leaning on one of the drink refrigerator displays. Thankfully, a gentleman who was in the aisle within my sight, who presumably heard the whole thing, came up behind us and asked him if he was in line. Loudmouth said no. The gentleman promptly told him that he was being inappropriate. Loud and needed to buzz off. To my surprise, Loudmouth stepped aside and with one final insult and stomped out of the store. I thanked the gentleman and we continued to wait in line. Me with an entire week's worth of groceries and him with a bottle of Gatorade. I offered to let him go in front of me and he declined, saying that he wasn't in a rush. It was really like one of those scenes in a movie where the nice tough guy saves the girl from the jackass. Even so, I was afraid Loudmouth would be waiting outside, so I asked the cashier to call one of her coworkers to walk me to my car. The gentleman insisted that he would be happy to escort me to my car, and I accepted. But as I stood there watching the cashier ring my items, I was overcome by this sick feeling, like I was going to vomit everywhere. I decided that it was just my nerves, as I have issues with anxiety, and this reaction is pretty normal. It typically passes within a few minutes once I mentally talk myself down. But for fear of further embarrassment, this time in the form of projectile vomiting in the middle of a grocery store, I hurriedly paid and took a seat on the bench close by. I told the gentleman never mind, and that I was a little freaked out, so I was going to call my husband to come pick me up instead. We'd get the car later. I didn't care, I just wanted to make it home in one piece. He told me to have a nice day and walked out the door. Hand to God, as soon as he walked out of the building, I felt normal again. So still blaming my anxiety, I felt sort of silly, but I had already called my husband. So I stood up and pushed my car over to the window to watch for my ride, just in time to see a junky white SUV drive by for, wait for it, gentleman in the passenger seat and Loudmouth in the driver's seat. I about shit myself. My roommate and I used to live in Virginia, about 20 minutes from her mom's apartment, and we used to dog sit for her all the time. One night, after we dropped the dogs off, we stopped at the Wells Fargo near our apartment so my roommate could deposit the money her mom had given her for watching the dogs. It was probably around 11 at night. As we were about to pull into the complex, she said, "That car is following us." I asked which car she meant, and she said to look behind us. Sure enough, there was a black car following us down the road. She turned on her turn signal, and so did the black car. I'd asked her how long he'd been there, and she said he'd been following us since we left her mom's house. Not only was I freaked out, but I was thoroughly pissed. I yelled at her and demanded to know why she hadn't said something sooner, and she said she hadn't wanted to scare me. I asked her if he followed us through Wells Fargo, and she said he did. He pulled up behind us while she deposited money at the ATM, and pulled through after us without depositing anything or stopping. After calling her an idiot for not telling me until we were home, I told her to turn right after the gate at our complex instead of left, because our apartment was one of the first ones on the end. It was bad enough that he knew what complex we were in. He didn't need to see which apartment we were in. She turned right and I told her to floor it. We drove through the complex as fast as we could and lost him near the back of the complex. We parked across the street from our apartment, turned off the car, and crouched down low to see if he would drive by again. We didn't see him, but we also didn't feel safe. We ran inside as quickly as we could. We grabbed some blankets and pillows and a can of pepper spray we had, and I grabbed my knife. We got back in the car, and I called my ex-boyfriend in a panic, asking him what else we could do. My roommate said she'd drive us to the movie theater she worked at because it wouldn't close for a few hours, and there would still be people in the parking lot. My ex kept asking me questions about the car that I couldn't answer, so I gave my roommate the phone. She described the car to the best of her ability, and then stopped mid-sentence when we got into the highway. He was following us again. My ex asked if she was certain it was the same car, and she said it had to be. She never saw the license plate, but she recognized the body in the headlights, and the shape of the man who was driving it. She gave me back the phone and called her manager at work to tell him we were going to come by and what was going on. She managed to get a few cars ahead of the black car and got into the parking lot. She parked in the back before anyone else pulled in, but we didn't see the black car. One of her coworkers came outside and parked next to us to wait while my roommate called the cops. My ex promised we'd be okay and that he would have been there if he could, and that if anything else happened to call him so he could talk to his sergeant about leaving for the weekend to check on us. He's in the Army, and he was on base a few hours away from us. The police said that since we didn't have the plate number, that there was nothing that they could do. But when we told them where we lived, they said that there was going to be a few officers there on patrol that night anyway. Since we couldn't tell whether or not he'd followed us into the parking lot, they told us just to go home. We ended up sleeping in the car in a Walmart parking lot and didn't come home until the next night. We never saw that black car again. So, this happened 3 months ago. I was out hiking with my friend. I'm not going to disclaim her real name for privacy, so let's call her Amy. Anyway, me and Amy set off for our travels at 6 a.m. We traveled by public transport. We got the 6:35 bus to our destination. The bus stop was empty for the first 10 minutes or so, then a man joined. He was looking at the same table as us, so we knew he was getting on the same bus. He sat on the bench opposite of us and started reading a book. I felt strange, as in I knew something was up. I glanced at the man, and he would catch my glare and just stare. It wasn't a normal stare. It was a sinister stare. I pulled out my phone and texted Amy to check it out. I didn't want to speak out loud so he knew I was talking about him. As soon as Amy's phone pinged, the man looked at us. He turns to Amy and asks, "Who is that texting you?" He said it in a way as if I already know. She nervously replies back, "Oh, it's my dad asking if I got here alright." He squinted his eyes and then continued reading. He started mumbling stuff to himself in a different language. I think it was Polish, but I'm not 100% sure. The bus was due in 5 minutes by this time, so me and Amy got our stuff together and ready to get on. We stand up and step towards the road where the bus pulls up. The man also stands up and stands literally a foot off of me. I can feel his breath on my neck. I felt so uncomfortable. I see the bus coming along. We board the bus and sat at the back. The man sits at the very front of the seats facing backwards. He puts his book away and stared at me. He stared at me even when I saw him. His glance didn't leave me. Our stop was the next one, so we walked to the driver's section of the bus and waited. The bus pulled up and we left. The man stayed on. We thought we wouldn't see him again. We were so wrong. So later that evening, we had stopped on our hike to have lunch. We were sat on a large rock on the top of the hill with the forest surrounding us. We were gossiping and laughing till Amy noticed someone walking up the path towards us. "Look," she said. "Isn't that the man from the bus?" I turned around and my heart sank. "Yeah," I replied. "Why is he here? He stayed on the bus when we got off. How does he know we would be here?" Amy gave me a scared and confused look and shrugged nervously. We decided to pack up our stuff and head back to the bus station to go home. We were sat at the station and the bus arrived. We got on the bus. The man was nowhere in sight. Last time we saw him was on the hike about 3 miles from here. He walked past us in the opposite direction. So we go for a few stops when the bus stops and lets someone on. Thinking nothing of it, we continue our conversation when a hand touches my shoulder. "Hey." I turn around to see that creepy man standing there, touching my freaking shoulder. What the hell? I thought to myself. How? He was a mile behind us. How has he got that far in such a short time? It's impossible. Yes, can I help you?" I kindly replied. "No, I just wanted to feel you." Immediately creeped out, I stepped up and complained to the driver about what was just said. The driver stops the bus and asks the man to leave. The man gets off staring at me viciously as he passes me. I sat back down and didn't say a single word the whole bus ride home. We got off the bus and Amy asks me if I'm okay and tells me I'm looking pale. That was strange, wasn't it? I asked Amy for reassurance that I wasn't over-exaggerating. "Hell yeah, it was," she instantly responded. We walked back to Amy's and sat in her room for an hour or two. We watched a movie and chatted. Time was getting on, and I had to leave, so her and her family could have lunch. I walked the short distance home and locked my door behind me. I never usually lock my door, but I was so creeped out. I had chucked some lunch in and popped the TV on while I ran a bath. I had my lunch and then went in the bath. I like to apply a face mask and lay in the bath for ages. So I'm laying there relaxing when I start getting an eerie feeling. I washed my face mask off and quickly washed my hair and jumped out of the bath. I went to my bedroom and put my pajamas on, and then went and turned the TV off downstairs, and made sure all my windows and my doors were locked. I lay in bed, and I keep thinking I can hear someone outside of my house, but brush it off as a stray dog or another animal. I eventually fall asleep and wake up suddenly during the night. I checked my alarm and it was 3:20 a.m. I don't usually wake up during the night, so I found this a little odd. I sat up and turned my lamp on. I then heard loud footsteps pacing around my house. I got out of bed and checked out my bathroom window, and couldn't see anything, so I went downstairs. Keeping the downstairs lights off, I peeked through the blinds to the front of the house. I saw a person standing there, staring at my bedroom window. I couldn't make out the face. I continued watching as the person paced up and down my driveway. Who could this be? I thought to myself. I had many thoughts like, is this person drunk? Is it an escapee from the asylum up the road? I continued watching for a good 15 minutes until they turned around to walk away. Stopped at my gate, and it's like they turned and looked straight at me. The streetlight was shining on the face, and I recognized the person. It was the man from the bus. What the hell? I thought to myself. How does he know where I live? The man left my driveway and walked off. I went back to bed and texted Amy the news in the morning. OMFG was her reply. We planned to meet for lunch that day. Lunchtime comes around and we meet at the cafe on Main Street. As we were chatting, I noticed the man from the bus on the opposite side of the road, walking backwards and forwards down the road, slowing down and staring directly at me as he passes us. I turn to Amy and say, "What the hell, man? He's there again." He seemed to be everywhere I was that day. I got my nails done, he was there, pacing around. I went to the grocery store, he was there. I started feeling very uncomfortable by this point, and went to the local police to report him. I was told that there was nothing that they could do, as he hadn't actually harmed me in any way, but they did write it down. I left feeling pretty shitty, as the police basically turned me away. The next few days got worse and worse. I would see him everywhere. I would get woken up in the middle of the night to him being on my door yelling, "Let me in. He loves me. We were meant for each other." All that shit. My neighbors must have phoned the police one night as I seen blue lights and heard the man yelling, "I live here. She's my love," as the police arrest him for disturbance. I went down and spoke to an officer and told them that I had reported the man already to your department, and I hoped that they could do something now. All they did was warn the man to stay away. There wasn't much they could do. It was quiet for a week or two, and then I started getting calls off an unknown number. I answered the first few times as I didn't know who it was, and all I heard was deep breathing down the phone. I hung up and eventually stopped answering. The calls became constant. I had 54 missed calls within 20 minutes. I went to the police station to report this. I said I think it's the man who's been stalking me. They had to log it as a different case as we couldn't prove it was him with the calls being from an unknown number. I didn't know how he got my number or why he had such an obsession with me, but I hated it. The calls became worse, where it would be 70 to even 90 missed calls in 20 minutes. There would be days where my phone would not stop ringing, and I would have to turn it off. I eventually changed my number and got no more calls. It's been 8 weeks now, and I haven't seen the man, but I have heard weird noises outside late at night. Nothing's happened yet, so far.